Hello again, everybody. Today we're going to talk about the church in the 4th century, and this is a kind of a long PowerPoint. I might break it up as good breaking up at good points within it, so you don't have to do it all in one sitting. But a lot happens between the year 300 and about 450. So the 4th century basically is an intense period of change and a turning point in the history of Christianity. So how does that start? And it starts with a man named Constantine. Constantine was the Roman emperor who took over after Diocletian. So remember, Diocletian is the one who thinks Rome is losing its power and its ability to dominate, and so begins an active persecution of Christianity in order to suppress it. And then within just a few years, everything turns around for Christianity. So Constantine, who by the way did not become a Christian himself until very late in his life, was the Roman emperor who took over in the early 300s. I did want to mention that he is the one who established the city of Constantinople. And Constantinople, which is the modern city of Istanbul in Turkey, was at this point became the second capital, and actually probably the more important capital of the Roman Empire under Constantine. So now we have one in Constantinople and one in Rome. So it is the second, along with Rome. But probably at this point, more important. So, what did Constantine do besides this? Okay, let's keep going here. Okie dokie, let's clear the screen. Didn't catch all of it. Okay, so what do we need to know about Constantine? Constantine, this was also a period when we get what the Romans called the barbarians from the north, the northern Europeans who were pushing farther and farther south and beginning to attack the borders of the northern borders of the Roman Empire, which in this case, in the case of this battle, was France. So Constantine is camped at this place called Milvian Bridge. Milvian Bridge is in France, and he is about to actively engage these barbarians. It is the year 312. The legend has it that he has a dream, and the night before the battle, a cross of light. So he sees a cross of light in the sky with the words, "By this sign you will conquer." And so you get the cross, the fiery cross, and he then goes out the next day and has all of his soldiers have it painted on them or somehow on their bodies. They wear it into battle, and they win. And because they win the battle, Constantine sees this as a sign of the importance of Christianity. So basically, he wins the battle, he goes back, and these edicts are named after the place where they're signed. So Edict of Milan in 313. So these are important dates. If I give a date, by the way, in these PowerPoints, a specific date, they will be on the test. If there's a general date, then just know the general, but a specific date, very much you need to remember. So basically, in Edict of Milan, he goes back and he legalizes Christianity. He does not make it the official religion of the Roman Empire. He just makes it legal, which means that Christianity can now come out of the shadows. This ends the persecution of Christians, and he actively goes about restoring what his predecessor Diocletian had taken from the Christian community. So this was a very big change for the fortunes of Christianity. And so we get down to this slide where I've got it already out. You can look at the pie chart in your textbook. from 300 to 350, 10 to over 50% of the population becomes Christian. One could argue this is the largest single increase in growth in Christianity in its history. So now by 350, greater than, I think that's right, 50% of the population are avowed Christians. And they go from being persecuted underground faith to a public faith. And so over the course of the next 100 years or so, it really significantly changes the course of the church. With sort of imperial support, you get more money and wealth. You get the building of elaborate, really the public church as something outside of the home. It happens in this period. But also, worship becomes more formalized because now all the bishops, there's the standardization of Christian religion basically takes another leap forward because now they're out in the open discussing issues and discussing this and having conversations that they could not have had earlier. So we get this formalization of practice across the board over time. But then also, under the Romans during this period, the first regular public holiday in the history of humanity essentially is inaugurated. It is during this period that, and you know, don't have time to go into this deeply, but of course the religious, the Sabbath of Judaism was a Saturday, and it is in this period that we get Christian Sabbath moved to Sunday, and then it becomes a public holiday. So one does not work on the Sabbath, which under the Roman designation is not Saturday, it is Sunday. And then, of course, this connection between religious and secular powers. The Roman Empire has thrown its force behind Christianity, and we get the beginning of what we call imperial Christianity. So imperial Christianity is that the reality at this point when you've got a government directly aligned with a faith, the faith of Christianity. And this, if you could hear my dogs, there's something interesting in the yard. So then this connection to come, and in 379 then, or Theodosius takes over in 379 and 380, he makes Christianity the official state religion. So from 300 to 380, Christianity goes from being illegal to being legal to being the only religion. Okay? So that's a big change. And that is the way things stay in Western Europe, at least until the creation of the U.S. and the Constitution and the separation of church and state in the U.S., which then gets exported back to France and other European constitutions. So a big change with a lot more power and wealth and all the things that come with that, good and bad. So lots of good, but not everybody is really pleased with what's going on. Okay, so this idea of imperial Christianity, which was embraced by many people, but not everybody. So again, as the church moves into the public sphere and becomes the dominant religion, there is an amount of accommodation that occurs in the public world. Many people, embrace this change wholeheartedly, but some other people say, oh, wait a minute, we are too easily accommodating to culture, and began a movement of resistance They resisted the easy connection between power, government power, and the faith. The government and the faith. And the most famous, or the most important probably, ongoing movement that derives out of the resistance is this idea of monasticism. So monasticism is something, you see the first examples of monasticism starting very soon after the Edict of Milan, remember 313. Monasticism begins in Egypt, and that's important for us to remember that Egypt was a major capital of Christianity in this period, and much of what the origins and the early orthodoxy of Christianity we have owed to our Egyptian forefathers. So there are two kinds of monasticism. So you're probably familiar in some way with modern monasticism, but eremitical monasticism is its oldest form. So eremitical, it is, you see the word hermit also comes from this word, from the same word. Eremitical monasticism is individuals living alone, generally retreating to the wilderness. So we see this first in Egypt, where we see devout men and women going to live often in caves. Some lived in trees, but they would go out alone to spend time in prayer and meditation. The idea why this is considered a resistance movement is the idea that whereas most of us have to go about our lives in a normal way and we accommodate to culture, we just have to survive, that some very few were called to support those of us who are not called to go out and live alone and pray for the world, to support, as a support for those of us who are not called to retreat. So they see this as a service for those of us who are not called such. So again, eremitical means alone. And so this is the earliest kind of monasticism. There's a famous Anthony of Egypt who spent his retreat time on a pole, on a platform on a pole, and it was considered an act of devotion and charity to offer food to these people. And so Anthony would have a bucket, and people would put food and things in the bucket, and he would haul it up to his platform. And when that way was able to live for long periods of time away from all people. So that's eremitical. Wait a minute, I don't think I want to do that. So, but that did not last, and we'd see very little eremitical monasticism practice, or at least in any official way. Because very soon what happened was that rather than living alone, we saw in these individuals gathering together in communities. And withdrawn, and that is what's Cenobitic. So Cenobitic monasticism is the practice of individuals going out away from society, gathering in communities to live a common life. So you go out there, you get up at the same time, you pray at the same time, you work at the same time, this idea of a common life. And this is probably the form of monasticism that you're most familiar with. By the way, the word monk comes from the word alone or one, right? So just to give you the terminology, a monk is usually the name we give to a male person who decides to withdraw from society. A nun is a female who have withdrawn from society, and the male, they go away by gender. A male is known as a monastery, and a group of females gets together in a convent. And again, the idea of living a common life together in service to the larger community. So we will stop there. If you have any questions or comments, put them in the discussion board or leave them in the comments. Be back in a minute.